With the Toronto Maple Leafs having a lot of pending UFAs and RFAs, rumors are starting to pick up, and one notable reporter has predicted the potential contracts for these players and revealed if the Leafs are potential suitors for a couple of these guys. We're going to break down who those players are and discuss if it makes sense for the Toronto Maple Leafs, as well as discuss some new targets that have emerged for the Leafs. I'll break all that down in this episode. Before we do, if you're a part of the 80% who are not subscribed, we are extremely close to 10,000 subscribers now. We're less than 150 subs away, so if you could hit the subscribe button, it would mean the world to Darius and I. That milestone is huge. Thank you guys for your support. And Darius, free agency talk now. We obviously discussed some trades yesterday, some coaching moves. A lot of news keeps on coming out, and I suspect that'll pick up even more once the Stanley Cup playoffs are over. But for now, there's a lot of RFAs, there's a lot of UFAs, and Frank Saravalli dropped a very notable report highlighting what the projected salaries are for specifically Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi. And Tyler Bertuzzi is the big one because we both kind of we had a guess and understanding, but now they have been revealed. So in this article, Frank projects Tyler Bertuzzi contract for next season at 4 years, 5.25, and Max Domi's at 2 years, 3.5. We'll get into Max Domi's in a minute. Bit of a no-brainer for me personally. But for Tyler Bertuzzi, 4 years, 5.25, and we're going to get into some of the other potential targets as well, but we're looking at now maybe discussing between Tyler Bertuzzi, Jake DeBrusk has come up. There's some other players which we'll discuss as well. But what are your thoughts on that figure from Frank Saravalli?
Well, again, it's just, I don't want to use the word speculation or anything, but it is a projection, right? So it might not end up being that way, but obviously Frank does have some insight. Listen, if you can get Tyler Bertuzzi at that number for that amount of years, I think the Leafs are going to do it. I was kind of skeptical and thinking they might go the Jake DeBrusk route that we were talking about a couple of days ago, just because he might be a cheaper option. Because I was thinking Bertuzzi was going to go 6 years, $6 million, something like that. And I just don't know if you're going to get that from the Leafs if you're Tyler Bertuzzi. But if we're looking at this number, he's getting a slight raise from what he got last year. And it's 4 years, and the salary cap is now regulated. It's going to go up every year, quite a significant amount. And now that the Leafs have their, big dogs locked up, it's not going to, affect them in that way. So I think you do that if you're the Leafs. I think you get Tyler Bertuzzi to return. He liked playing here. We went over that a couple weeks ago and a couple videos ago. He liked playing here. He wants to return, and it's likewise for the Leafs. So if they can get a deal in that ballpark, I think you re-sign him.
Yeah, we've seen Brad Treliving be willing or discussed his willingness to re-sign guys who perform in the playoffs. And Bertuzzi last year, at least from a surface level regarding his numbers, were down a little bit compared to some of his previous years. So maybe that's what's holding the number down a bit for teams willing to potentially give him a high amount of AAV and, whether it's 6 years, 4 years, 5 years. But 4 years is pretty good. And again, 4 years, 5.25. He's only 29 years old. And there's a couple of other guys here which we'll discuss. But first, I want to touch on Max Domi. 2 years, $3.5 million. It seems inevitable at this point that Max Domi is going to end up at Toronto Maple Leaf. He says it's his dream to play for the Maple Leafs. He already played for them. He wants to be a part of the team that hopefully goes on to win the Cup. Seems like a Craig Berube type player. Seems like a Brad Treliving type player. I think this is a no-brainer. So any quick thoughts on Domi before we move on to some of the other guys?
Yeah, I just realized I said on Bertuzzi that he's actually taking a pay cut, but it's okay because he's getting more years. But anyway, that's what I meant. But in terms of Max Domi, like you said, no brainer. The number's even less and term less than what I thought it was going to be. But again, these are just projections. You do it. If it's hovering between 3 and 4 million, you do it. If it's between 2 to 4 years, you do it. I think he was a very useful player for the Leafs. He's probably going to come into the middle six again and be useful and can kind of stick wherever they need him. He came up big in faceoffs in Game 5, I believe. So he's pretty versatile. He came up big in certain moments. He likes to be a Leaf. He wants to be a Leaf. The Leafs like him. So just a no-brainer in my eyes. I think both of them end up returning if the salary and the years are projected to be exactly that.
Yeah, and it was Game 5. Yeah, we saw Max Domi take over and just completely not win them the game necessarily, but definitely kept them in it, especially with the faceoffs, like you mentioned, a crazy percentage, 75 or 80 plus. But you look at some of these other projections. It's Frank Saravalli. I recommend you check out the article. I'll probably leave it in the description. So it's the top 25 or 75 UFAs with the contract projections. And Darius, let's get into some of these now. So we have Bertuzzi's here, 29 years old, 4 by 5.25. And now you're looking at a couple of these other guys that the Leafs could potentially have interest in. And when you're looking at a guy like Tyler Toffoli, he's 32. He was obviously traded to Winnipeg at the deadline from the Devils, 4 years, $6 million. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. And Jake DeBrusk, you look at his contract versus Bertuzzi, very similar numbers, a bit more expensive to get Jake DeBrusk, who is a year younger, which gives him an extra year. And again, all projections, but he probably has some sort of idea about where he's getting these numbers from talking to executives. Out of these three, and I guess we haven't really discussed Tyler Toffoli. That's probably a discussion for a different video. He's an interesting guy, doesn't skate very well, but has an unbelievable shot, scores a ton of goals. What are your thoughts on this?
Another scoring option. He's a little bit more expensive, so I would suspect that it doesn't happen. And we haven't really heard anything about it, so I wouldn't put too much into that yet, because, as we near closer to free agency, maybe we'll hear something, but a little bit more expensive, but he would certainly help the goal scoring problem. But I'm just not sure if the Leafs want to build their team around more players like that, if that makes sense. I think they need more Tyler Bertuzzi types, or even Jake DeBrusk. And like you mentioned, Jake DeBrusk too, he would be a cheaper option than Tyler Bertuzzi. But I wonder if you bring Bertuzzi back because of, the fact that he played on the team already last year. He's familiar with the guys. I would like to see what Tyler Bertuzzi does under Craig Berube. That's a lot of mystery there. I wonder if he, really turns it on there. He had a terrible first half of the season this year. He was trying to figure it out, but he really turned it on in the second half. Didn't have the greatest playoffs either, but I do wonder what that looks like under Craig Berube. So I think you still pursue Tyler Bertuzzi and go that route, and we'll see what happens, because again, these are projections.
Yeah, very much so. Let's get into just a couple of the other ones that he had here. Some new targets, not necessarily linked to the Leafs directly, but just to give an idea of what the free agency is shaping out to be. Sean Monahan's another guy that we brought up. He was linked to the Leafs at the deadline. Obviously, the Leafs didn't have they didn't have a second round pick, and they didn't want to give up their first this year, which was ultimately probably the right call, especially for a guy like Sean Monahan. He's projected to get 4 years, $5.3 million. Max Domi, again, no brainer, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who we haven't really discussed. He's a left shot defenseman, but Sean Monahan's a very interesting one. Again, I think at this point, albeit, he is a center, which is, the Leafs could use some depth center pieces, but I feel like bringing back Bertuzzi would be a better option, just given what the Leafs need at this moment, even though Sean Monahan is a very solid player, had some great years with the Canadiens, had a very good year last year as well, but I just don't know if it's exactly what they need.
No, I don't think it is. And, with Tavares still on the books, he's presumably going to take that second line center spot again. And then you have Max Domi, who can kind of play third line center, we saw this year. So if you do get Sean Monahan, he's probably going to be the third line center. Like, I don't know if he's going to beat out Tavares for that second line center spot. And then at that cap hit and the amount of years, I don't think it makes sense for the Leafs. And I don't think that trade at the deadline made sense for the Leafs either. But again, he's getting older. I'm not sure that makes sense. But again, these are projections. You never know what the Leafs are thinking. Maybe they get creative. We'll just have to see closer to free agency. But I think they're probably going to stick to Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi at this point.
Yeah, let us know out of all these, which one is your favorite. I'll throw this one up here just for some of the other projections for the guys that are probably out of the Toronto Maple Leafs realm of possibilities here. Maybe Brandon Montour, if we're having not a pipe dream, but a dream player, a right shot defenseman to bring in. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Which of these players, I'll show me on these guys, and then all these 6 players would you want? I think ultimately, as much as we're discussing this, Max Domi gets done, and we'll see between Bertuzzi and Jake DeBrusk. I think Jake DeBrusk has a definite chance, depending on maybe if Bertuzzi gets a better offer somewhere else, and then the number lines up more with the Leafs. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Hit the subscribe button. See you tomorrow.